And we have an enormous job to do with not just my campaign for U.S. Senate, but the reason why it is appropriate to sing Va Pensiero and then rally round the flag is that the entire world is depending on Americans saving the United States. And this became very clear in the recent UN General Assembly vote to get a ceasefire in Gaza and release all the hostages. And the first time around, the US in the Security Council vote vetoed this. And then there was a General Assembly vote, and it was 153 nations for, and the US and 10 other nations against, really large nations like, I can't remember the names of them.
Micronesia.
Yeah, Micronesia, right? Our great allies. So the problem we have is that there seems to be no bottom to the depravity of the current government of the United States.
True.
We saw this starting in 2021, December, when President Putin made 3 separate attempts to get a treaty where the United States and NATO and the UK would agree that Ukraine would not join NATO, that Ukraine would not have nuclear weapons. And for anyone either old enough to remember Kennedy, which I am not, I'd like you to know, but anyone old enough or who knows about the Cuban Missile Crisis,
I do.
okay, knows that we didn't consider it acceptable to have nuclear missiles 90 miles from our coast. How far away from the border of Russia is Ukraine?
Share a common border.
Right, 0. And we in the West have had the narrative that there was an unprovoked aggression by Russia against Ukraine, and we have been only too happy to sacrifice, nobody knows because of the fog of war, 350,000, 500,000, 700,000 Ukrainians. The average age of a Ukrainian soldier is now 43. There are no young men left. And Biden and company are probably preparing to throw Zelensky under the bus and blame him and his corruption, which is massive, for the failure, but it was a failure by design from the beginning. Then, just in the nick of time, when the Ukrainian counteroffensive failed, we suddenly get a terrorist attack by Hamas into Israel, perfectly timed for Bibi Netanyahu, who was about to go to jail, and Biden to change the subject from the losing war. And then the Netanyahu regime took advantage of this to do what they have wanted to do, which is the most hideous ethnic cleansing that we have seen. And what does the US media do? They say if you're against genocide, that you support Hamas and you are anti-Semitic. And this is how they divide everybody, because no one is allowed to be for peace. I went to a town hall meeting of my horrible congressman, Mike Lawler, and they said, which side are you on? And I said, I'm for peace. And they said, no, you have to be with the Palestinians or the Israelis. There is not a place for the people for peace. So what we have to understand is we are in this together. And what we are up against is what the LaRouche movement is calling now the military-industrial financial complex. My opponent for U.S. Senate, Kirsten Gillibrand, is married to the son of a British character who was the vice president of British Aerospace for a while. She is on the intelligence committee. She never met a war that she didn't support and that she didn't want to give billions of dollars to. We have Lindsey Graham in the Senate. He said the Ukraine war is a great investment. It's cheap to kill Russians. What kind of person speaks like that? Madeleine Albright said, oh, 500,000 Iraqi children, well, it was really hard, but it was worth killing them to get rid of Saddam Hussein. And the problem is that we in the United States have not run these people out of office on a rail. We have tolerated this. We act like it's normal for a guy with senile dementia who talks about his father coming home to his kibbutz 65 years ago when the attack occurred, and we act like this is a credible presidential candidate. And everyone is supposed to go along with this charade. Now, Hans Christian Andersen, the Danish storyteller, wrote a story about this, and it is our job, and it is the purpose of my campaign, to break out of the story. The story was the emperor's new suit of clothes. And there was an emperor who was so vain and so conceited and so rich, he wanted a new suit for every moment of the day. A new suit at breakfast, a new suit for midday tea, a suit for lunch, a suit for dinner. And finally, he wanted the best tailors anywhere in the land to make him a phenomenal suit, the suit of all suits. So a bunch of charlatans came in and they said, we'll make you a suit and this will be a great joke because he's going to be naked. But the emperor said that anybody who says that they cannot recognize my suit, anyone who doesn't appreciate the beauty of my suit is going to lose their job. Does that sound familiar? If you don't go along with the narrative, if you don't recognize the beauty of my suit, you are not qualified for your post in the kingdom. So all those groveling people, like your friends and neighbors in the American population, who want to say what they're supposed to be heard saying, said, oh, it's so beautiful. Oh, I can't see anything. It's so beautiful. So the big parade comes. The emperor marches stark naked in his invisible suit down the street, and a little boy who doesn't care, doesn't have a job, says, but Daddy, the emperor has no clothes. And then the whole crowd breaks out and says the emperor is naked. But what happens? And this is the part everyone forgets. The emperor keeps marching. And that is what we have. That is there anyone who doesn't know the President of the United States is out of his mind? Is that not obvious to anyone? Is there anyone who doesn't know that Joe Biden, Victoria Nuland, Jake Sullivan, and a bunch of other people ran the biggest infrastructure terrorism ever in history, blowing up the Nord Stream bombing, the Nord Stream pipeline, and not one single congressman will demand an investigation? So why did they steal my vote when I ran against Schumer and became the only independent candidate in the entire state to succeed at their outrageous requirement to get me? I got on the ballot. I turned in, this many people here were involved. We turned in 66,000 signatures, the first time that had ever been done in the state of New York, because they tripled the requirement for independent candidates. And then lo and behold, Chuck Schumer would not debate me. Why would he not debate me? Because he and the Republicans shared the same opinion on Ukraine. And they did not want someone entering the debate who would say this is a lie. So we have a huge job to do, and this is why my campaign for Senate, and we have another major crisis for the United States, which is the presidential system, and I hope I'm not offending anyone, but that's my nature. We don't have a qualified presidential candidate.
No, no. You said it. You said
We
it.
have an insane lunatic who can barely walk on and off the stage as president, and the Democratic Party intends to ram him or a substitute for him down our throat. Then we have Donald Trump, who is under vicious attack, and it is outrageous, and it's part of the message to not let anyone run for president. But where is Donald Trump when it comes to the genocide in Gaza? Nothing. Robert Kennedy can't get Secret Service protection. He has a family history.
Yeah.
They don't want him running. Where is he when it comes to the genocide in Gaza? Nothing. So there is no opposition. We have a lunatic president and we have no opposition. Just because the intelligence agencies and the news media and everything else is attacking someone, which is wrong, doesn't necessarily mean that they are therefore qualified for the office for what we need right now. Because what is about to happen is the entire financial system is blowing out, and that is the driver for all of this. And what they're freaked out about is a new system. Thank God for the work of Lyndon LaRouche for the last 60 years, because you have a new system which the majority of the planet is joining. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and today, Iran, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Ethiopia joined. Now, what percentage of the world's population is that? What percentage of the world's raw materials is that? And guess what? They're going to get out of the dollar. Is that because they're against us? No. It's because we're insane. It's because we've been using the dollar to attack them. If we weren't using the dollar to attack them, they wouldn't be getting out of the dollar, but we destroyed the dollar. In 1971, Lyndon LaRouche warned that Nixon was going to decouple the dollar from gold and take down the Bretton Woods system. And LaRouche said, if that happens, you are going to see fascism and war on an order you can't imagine. And everyone said, oh, LaRouche is crazy. He's an extremist. He's exaggerating. That'll never happen. Hello? That's where we are. Fascism and war. The United States, which has called itself the great democracy, we've totally lost our identity. We had a revolution against the British Empire. We inspired the entire world. We were the first country to defeat those bastards. And what happened? Kennedy gets assassinated. Malcolm X is assassinated. Martin Luther King is assassinated. Bobby Kennedy is assassinated. We go to Vietnam, which we would not have been in. What was the purpose of Vietnam?
Money.
To destroy the United States. What was the purpose of killing 1 million people in Iraq? To destroy the United States, to destroy our morale. We've had, my sister and brother-in-law are veterans from the Iraq War. You realize we have 4 times more soldiers have died of suicide than died in combat. Because we are destroying the soul of this nation. Why is music the most important weapon in my campaign? And everyone who works with me is going to learn how to sing, because you're not in this campaign if you don't sing. Because we have to get our soul back. Because we have to put the bottom in the bottom. There has to be a point where you say, human life is sacred. We cannot kill people. If we have an economy that kills people, it's wrong. Why is Jeffrey Epstein and his clients like Jamie Dimon and God knows Larry Fink, I bet he was there too, why is it more important to bail them out than to do the $40 billion of repairs that we need at NYCHA? Why do we have triple the amount of money for Lindsey Graham's cheap way of killing Russians by arming Ukraine than we have to make sure people have gas and heating in the NYCHA public housing buildings? Why are we so insane that we are saying by closing Joe's wood-fired pizza oven that we're going to save the environment? You realize this is killing us all. This pizza oven, right? And I want to thank you very much for your.
Thank you.
That was very So, my campaign is dedicated to sanity and reason, that the only purpose for a legitimate government is to promote the general welfare of the population, and you do it, as it says in our Declaration of Independence, through the consent of the governed. But that means that the public is required to give or withhold your consent. In a democratic republic, you are not allowed to remain silent. You are not allowed to sit on the sidelines. When there is a fight, you have to be in it. The reason we're in this mess is people have not been in it. And it's hard to be in it. People are working many hours. The more you work, the more in debt you are. I was filling out my campaign expenses and discovered to go to a rally at Fox News, where we had a rally midtown, between parking, tolls, gas, it's $100 just to set up there. Now, people are going through this. Everyone knows people who are like one paycheck away from being foreclosed upon. But our lives are still better than the lives of people right now in Ukraine, in Gaza, in other places, in Sudan, where 25 million are facing death right now and no one even talks about it. And we're not in jail. So the whole world is wondering what the hell is going on with the American people and why we aren't holding our government accountable. And my campaign is to give the American people a way to make their voice heard. So since we don't have the wherewithal to run a presidential campaign, and they seem to not be allowing decent presidential candidates, I am running for U.S. Senate in New York, but we have recently started setting up support committees in every single state in the United States. We want to make the Senate race here a focus for the nation, so that this race can shape, maybe someone running for president will change their policy. Maybe some new person will step into the race that we don't know about yet. Maybe we can create a machine that puts so much pressure on the system that we get 45 congressmen and senators to stand up and stop being corrupt, perverted slobs. That's the idea. So I'm very glad that you're all here. It's going to be a really fun fight. There is nothing else worth doing, because if we don't get the United States straightened out, then it is very unlikely that the rest of the world and we ourselves can survive. So we don't have a choice. We have to do it. There's literature here. I published a pamphlet. Everyone who has not donated your $3,300 legal limit to my campaign, and that's through June 25th, the primary, and then it starts over, should do so if you can. If you've given it, or you other people you know, get them to donate, take literature, and sign up with Suzanne, raise your hand, and Lynn Speed. We are going to need 400 people starting April 16th We have 6 weeks to get me on the ballot. And 2 years ago, it was a big fight, but they weren't expecting it. So it went along it was tough. It was really tough. It was a grind. Jose can tell you, and others who were involved can tell you. But the last 2 weeks, when they figured we were getting close, we started getting really nasty harassment. People would come up to our petitioners, grab the clipboard, throw it on the ground, and go in and tell the store manager that we had assaulted them. In other words, I'm expecting this time around, because they know that we are capable of doing this, that it's going to be a much tougher fight. And therefore, last time we had 200 volunteers. This time I want to have 400 volunteers, and I'd like to create a situation where we get all of our signatures in 3 or 4 weeks instead of 6 weeks. Great. We need everybody here to help with that. And if we can get our nation back to have a sane identity, and part of the way we're going to do that is we have to think of where are we going to be 50 years from now. The United States, in my humble opinion, should have 1 billion people. And that's not because Biden brings in all kinds of human trafficking and it's drug money laundering. And that is not, the people who are being used, the migrants I'm referring to, are not the cause of the problem. I think they want us to start killing them. I think that's what they want, is to get a civil war. What is happening, and I went to the Roosevelt Hotel, and thank God I had a little bit of high school French, because the people I met were from Mauritania. And the guy told me the traffickers or whatever came to Mauritania and said, oh, Biden's opened the borders, come to the US, the streets are paved with gold, you can get a career. And this poor guy had taken $5,000 of his probably 5 extended families' life savings and bought a plane ticket to go to Nicaragua to then come up here. What they're doing is they're trafficking the people in the opposite direction of the drug trade. So it's just part of Wall Street. If you want to stop it, we have to go after Larry Fink. We have to go after Jamie Dimon. We have to hit it from the top. As soon as we hit it from the standpoint that we are against another person who is being victimized by the same system, we lose. We have to have the courage to go after the untouchables. So, the United States needs to have 1 billion people. Maybe it'll take a century or so. We need cities with infrastructure that can handle that. We need 42,000 miles of modern high-speed rail. We need about 500 new nuclear power plants. And when we put Larry Fink in jail, what we can do is retool Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman. I have a friend who has a plan for Northrop Grumman and Long Island to employ 30,000 people designing a slow maglev train. The fast ones go like 300 miles an hour and they have trouble with turns. But if you want to use magnetically levitated rail in your cities, you need a slow train. Northrop Grumman has this gigantic testing facility that's vacant. Why don't we invented maglev in the US, we never built it, so we sold it to Japan. Why don't we get it back here, do the research and develop it? And the US can do that, and believe me, if we told our children that you have the opportunity to grow up to produce something great that's going to last generations, that's going to make a life for future generations, believe me, they would be interested. The reason we can't find a workforce is we're not doing anything. We're doing destructive things. Who grows up and says, gee, when I grow up, I want to be a serial killer? Nobody says that. Why should we expect our children to want to do that? So we have to change the future, and that's what's going to inspire us to get through this fight. I'm asking everyone here to work with me, work with each other. Don't let petty differences and I won't curse, propaganda from the New York Post and the New York Times and Fox News to divide us. If we can get the United States to regain its revolutionary, anti-colonial identity, then we will save the world. That's it.
Bravo.